distinctions, that being a professor is not what you do, but it's who you are. And so I suppose I'm very interested, I'm sure Shashwat is as well, is what drives you as a professor? And how do you enjoy being a professor, especially at London Business School, a world-renowned university?
So what I really like is that if I define the purpose of a professor as the creation and dissemination of knowledge. So let's sort of break that up. The creation of knowledge is that you can research whatever you find to be really interesting. So my PhD at MIT, I actually looked at the effect of World Cup football results on the stock market. Now that seems a completely crazy thing to look at, but I'm somebody who's really passionate about the sports. And why did I look at that? Because I wanted to show that markets were not efficient, right? We have the idea of efficient markets, that stock prices are driven by unemployment and dividends and profits, but I wanted to show that it's affected by emotions, and that was what I saw in my time at Morgan Stanley. So I used the World Cup as some shock to national mood. And then when I started to work on responsible business towards the end of my PhD, it was a really unpopular topic back then. People thought it was fluffy. If you're a finance person, you should be hard-headed and not think about responsibility. But that was something that I was working on before it became so popular. So I think creation of knowledge is that you can move into these new fields. Yes, it's more established right now, but back when I was writing that paper, it was something that people weren't really taking seriously. But then I think what's really important is the dissemination of knowledge. So the first thing I ever taught was actually rowing. So at Oxford, where I was an undergrad, right, that is the biggest sport. But the first competition of every year, you can only do that if you are a beginner. So once I'd done that race, I couldn't do it again. So I had to be either a coach or a cox. And so you're the person who sits in the boat and you actually coach the rowers. And then when I was came off the outing after coxing an outing, and the people said to me, that was a really good session that you led, I just felt some immediate feedback. And so that's why I also like the dissemination of knowledge part. So many professors, they do not care about teaching, right? You get your reputation purely on publication. Teaching is something you just have to do in order to pay the bills because that's what drives the tuition revenue, but you don't get famous out of teaching. But I love that teaching aspect, is that if I give a good class, you can immediately see the student's reaction, particularly for finance, because some people do come to do an MBA because they want to do marketing or organizational behavior. They don't like something quantitative like finance. So my challenge is to try to make that interesting. And so that's what I do with my teaching. But similarly with my research, why I love doing podcasts like this is to explain maybe something complex which took me 5 years to do in terms of the study, but make it same in practical language, and to show why this is something interesting, not just academic.